Is there a link between craziness and success? 100% of entrepreneurs have hypomania and 72% have anxiety. It makes perfect sense. Let me ask you this, can you relate to any of these? Number one, filled with energy, flooded with ideas, driven, restless, unable to keep still, channels energy into wildly ambitious goals, feeling chosen, risk taker, impulsive, witty and gregarious, confident, charismatic, and persuasive. Well, I relate with 100% of those, and I think you only need 50% of them to be labeled as hypomanic. And it's not just me. In the book, The Hypomanic Edge, it breaks this down in a way I have never seen explained before. And in a study done by the University of San Francisco, 72% of entrepreneurs had clinical levels of anxiety. So what is the hypomanic edge? Why is it actually an edge and an advantage to have higher levels of anxiety and higher levels of hypomania? So hypomania is really a release of nature's happy drugs in your brain, like dopamine, and produces an elevated state with higher levels of self-confidence, higher levels of energy, higher levels of focus and motivation. This is very different from mania, which is actually bipolar, a form of bipolar, right? So hypomania and mania are actually two different things. So hypomania is this sweet spot in the human brain where you have this intense focus and energy, and you can actually focus it on productive tasks for up to a week in time. So if hypomania is on the literal spectrum of something where you would need to be cared for by a doctor and get medical supervision, then yes, success and craziness are actually linked. About 10 years ago, I was diagnosed hypomanic and anxiety disorder by a clinical psychiatrist and psychologist, and I started applying what other people would label as a negative, like lower episodes, which I don't even call them depression, I just call them reflection periods, and my hypomania periods where I'm super excited about a new idea. Had I known that also my anxiety was a gift and it was actually my ability to look around corners, to plan, and had I known that when my energy wasn't so high, that was actually my ability to reflect and self-reflect. It wasn't necessarily depression, it was really my self-learning mechanism where I would ponder and I'd ask myself how I can improve my habits and how I can improve my ways of thinking. Hypomania is actually my number one competitive advantage as an entrepreneur. It's the thing that allows me to work nonstop and have so much fun on the mission that I'm on in business, and to take bold leaps and have irrational levels of self-confidence. When I started my company, there was already 32 million existing businesses in America, but I had the delusional self-confidence to think I could create the 32 million and one business. So let's talk about why this is. Why is America and why are entrepreneurs filled with hypomanic leaders? What does this mean? Why did it become that way? What happened is way back, hundreds of years ago, a person named Christopher Columbus, remember him, goes up to the Queen, I forget where he was living, and he says, I think the world's not flat. I think the world is round. I think we can soar into the open seas and we can get on a boat by paddle and go across the ocean and we can find undiscovered lands. What do you think everyone called him when he said that? Crazy. And they go, okay, Christopher, let's do this experimental mission of yours. Let's go sail across the sea. And meanwhile, they're rolling their eyes, going, okay, well, we're gonna see how this works out for crazy Chrissy guy. And lo and behold, they do discover an undiscovered land. They do discover the Americas, right? And it turns out this crazy guy with a vision who felt chosen, he felt like he was called from God himself to open up the ether, to open up the world to undiscovered worlds, right? And that comes from those floods of dopamine that create huge levels of self-confidence, right? And Christopher Columbus, a borderline crazy person in a good way, discovered the Americas. And then what happened? A lot of other crazy people migrated to the Americas, right? We are an immigrant nation in the United States. And what percent of people migrate? What percent of human beings on planet Earth uproot and move somewhere else? 1%. So the United States is literally filled with the 1% of people who uprooted from their houses, sailed across the sea, and moved to a brand new land. Why has the United States consistently over the past multiple decades, even centuries, been the #1 economy in the world? Well, because it's filled with people who are a little bit crazier than other countries. In surveys that have been done, where they survey people in Japan, and they ask them, what level of respect does someone in Japan get for starting their own business? I think it was like 2 or 3% of people surveyed said that that's a respectable thing to do. What do you think they say in the United States when you start your own business? It was like 94% of people in the United States reported starting their own business as a respectable, status-driven thing to do. Why? Because we're filled with maniacs, literally. The United States is filled with the biggest entrepreneurial energy, the most innovation over the last couple centuries. And it's time to unleash your inner immigrant, to become innovative again, to tap into those primal urges that you have. And by the way, it is primal. We are hardwired to be manic and to be hypomanic in times of defense and in times of battle. And the same thing is why, especially people in the United States, won all of the, or pretty much all of the most important wars, right? If you really look back to like all the mission critical wars, like the Revolutionary War, for example, and you look at why did the United States win these mission critical wars in their upbringing? Well, because there was a lot of manic, crazy maniacs that were fighting those wars, right? And that's what won battles. That's what won wars. And that's why the hypomanic edge lived on in our DNA. Why wouldn't this trait die off, right? Well, natural selection says that the most successful traits in a society will typically reproduce. So what happened is all of the hypomanic people ended up becoming really successful, becoming leaders, becoming very respected in their colonies, quote unquote, and they became leaders and they reproduced more, and that created more reproduction with people who had the hypomanic gene. So naturally, over eons and huge periods of time, the hypomanic gene lived because it is so effective. So these natural ebbs and flows in the biology of our brain are actual natural things that are hardwired into tens of thousands, hundreds of millions of years of natural selection and programming of what made humans survive. Now, what's happening? Well, this gift is being medicated out of a lot of people, right? Where people are thinking that I need to manage around this. I don't need to embrace this. I need to manage around this. And people feel bad for themselves, right? When they binge or when they have undeniable, intense focus on one thing, they think, oh man, I gotta balance things out more. I think we'd all be better off shamelessly accepting our gifts. This is why I got on the same page with my wife about this. As soon as I read this book, I was like, babe, you need to know what hypomania is because it defines me in a nutshell. Like when I work, some days, like during the work week, like I'll work 16 hours. I'll come home and I'll still be like I won't feel tired at all when I get home. I can't control that. It's dopamine being released from my freaking brain. What do you want me to do? Stop the dopamine? I think accepting this is so important because I spent so much of my life doubting this. Meanwhile, I think Pablo Picasso was bipolar, Abraham Lincoln was bipolar, Alexander Hamilton had bipolar, and so many people who have these creative breakthroughs, they rely on mania. For me, I didn't react like that right off the bat. I thought, well, there must be something wrong with me, right? Which is why I went through years of psychotherapy thinking I had to fix myself. I didn't think I needed to double down on this. I thought I had to avoid it and hide it from other people. When you think about Christopher Columbus, he literally freaking disagreed that the world was flat. Charted course in the ocean to find the undiscovered land. Of course he had mania. And if you drag this forward to Jeff Bezos, when he started Amazon, he said, you're gonna work long, hard, and smart. And at Amazon, you can't choose 2 of the 3. You have to choose all 3 if you want to work at Amazon. Because he had that energy, right? When you look at what Elon puts his team through with Tesla and SpaceX and these crazy deadlines and turnaround times that like are insane deadline. that some of them came true. Like, we're gonna literally create a reusable rocket by X date. These crazy deadlines come from that impulse, that drive, that ability to build urgency. And you look at all the modern entrepreneurs who are crushing it, you're gonna see that in the majority of cases, there is a mental gift. I won't call it a mental illness. There is a mental difference happening in the mind of a successful person. This applies to athletes, most successful artists in the world, most successful entrepreneurs, most successful investors. You look at the top people across every single industry, that the 1% of the 1% are always gonna be teetering between that link of craziness and success. The difference is that the majority of those we look up to, they learn to turn their adversity into an opportunity, to turn what was once their ailment into their reason for success, their gift, their unique thinking processes, and their motivation. So, whatever it is you're going through, if it's a negative, if it's a super negative, right? I hope that as a result of this video, you can find a way to turn that around, flip it on its head, and find a way to tap into that and make it your unique differentiator, your unique process for adding value to the market and adding value in whatever it is you do. I hope you found value from this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment below. If you want to be vulnerable like me, someone who has been diagnosed with this and also anxiety disorder, and let me know, how did you leverage it? How have you learned to turn this into an opportunity for you so that everyone else watching this video can also learn? And I'll see you in the next video. Make sure you subscribe so you can know when I release videos like this, and I'll see you next time.